Okay, so welcome to our little open house. It's a pleasure to be able to explain our way of training and of education. In our German-speaking world, we have a long tradition. We have been training analysts for, well, over 20 years now. So this has been going, long and strong and good. And I'm very happy with the turnout. We have some really good professionals, and I'm very proud and happy with them. Let me just, yes, this is better now. So it's bigger. You can see what I'm doing. So before we talk about the actual training, I would just quickly like to introduce ourselves, or, I will give the other two teachers the possibility to talk a little bit about themselves. So we have Martin Grassinger and myself from the German-speaking world, human design world. Martin is from Germany. I'm from Vienna in Austria. We are very, very ancient human design professionals. Martin started, he was the first one ever, so he was trained by Ra personally and individually before Ra even started to train people. So Martin is really one of the sort of first professionals and has been working with it ever since then. I joined in '93, so it was a little bit later. And Susan, if I remember correctly, you started in '98, so a few years afterwards, but still you can see some really old human design people here, and I'm very happy to offer, this foundation education, because training analysts really is a wonderful start, is a wonderful way to really get into the human design knowledge. So I suggest probably you talk a little bit about yourself, Martin and Susan, and I'll shut up for a little bit. Just tell us quickly, how you started, what you've been doing, and what you love in human design. And after our little introduction, we will talk about the courses. So, just introduce yourselves, okay? Martin?
Okay, that's me. I start. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, fine. Okay. Yeah, as Ilse just told you, I'm very long in this human design area and business. Maybe we wait for a second. There's someone else coming in, stepping in.
Maketa, hello. And hello, Maketa. I turn off your video. This just keep going, Martin.
Okay, yeah. So it was right from the start. The main thing is I was working as a natural therapist, so with natural medicine, holistic medicine, mainly classical homeopathy, and I was always interested in a tool which helps me to individualize every human being, and therefore I was working with astrology. But I was not satisfied because of working with the body and what to say about it, and it was sometimes it went into the right direction, but it wasn't that something that helps me. So I was still looking for something, and it brought me in contact with Ra, and it was my perspective right from the beginning. The other part was that even in my youth, I started to study the I Ching. So I was really fascinated of it. And so it was something absolutely familiar to me. And to be in contact with the Reif I Ching and with the text and with the poesy, for me, it's very poetic. It was just fascinating. And so over time, there was this connection between, you name it, the ancient way of looking at the hexagrams and the new texts which we have in the Reif I Ching. And the other thing was that I was always interested in the hexagrams, and I think you might know the book of Richard Wilhelm, which is the favorite. It wasn't just my favorite. I was looking for what's behind, what was before, because Richard William, he was translating it. And so therefore I stepped into the Chinese philosophy, into the basics, because the Chinese philosophy is made out of images, and from these images they created letter for the language. So you can go back with each hexagram to an image, and if you just look at these images in terms of several hexagrams, and you put it in relationship to the text of the Reif-I Jing, all of a sudden it really it opens up a horizon and shows us something. And then the next step for me was just to look at the body graph in terms of the body, because I was looking for something that gives me a better understanding of how an individual body is organized naturally. So my perspective to each hexagram is a biochemical one, not in terms of so that you know the chemistry in this, but much more what's the task, what's the purpose on the physical level, on the material level for the body. And whenever I was teaching and giving the education to analysts, when I was teaching the 64 hexagrams, it was, for me, it was obvious to give the students a relationship to what they can experience within themselves physically. And not only the hexagrams, the definitions, the streams, the centers. And so in order to get a deep understanding what this center is really all about, and how the flow of life is moving through the centers. So beside the aspect of circuits and so on. So to see each hexagram is a specific tool in the chemistry of life. And behind the chemistry of life is always a philosophy. And these two worlds, so the philosophy, how to explain the world, the Chinese philosophy, and this in combination with the amino acid of a hexagram in terms of the DNA, and then to see it's just the same. It just, this is the integration field, the body graph, what we have, and it comes together. And if you have it like this, then you can have a deeper understanding, because it's not only the intellectual knowledge, and hopefully you don't forget it, like learn a vocabulary, but to have it in relationship to something that's alive. And I just call it to put flesh to the bones. So this is what I really love to do, and therefore I'm really looking forward to this course.
Great, great, great. Thank you. So Martin is going to teach level 1. We'll talk about the levels afterwards. Now let's move to Susan, my friend Susan from the US. We met many years ago at the Cross course in Sedona. Yeah, I'm very happy to have you join us and teach with us. And yeah, tell us a little bit about you, please.
Thank you, Ilse. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be able to share my knowledge with others. And yes, you were absolutely correct. I got introduced to human design in 1998. I had my first reading with Rob when he came to the town I was living in. I live in Colorado in the United States, excuse me. I also had a very, very close friend who is also deep into human design that got me involved, she and I have done this journey together, which has been enormously helpful. Just having that close a person to discuss everything that I was learning and begin to learn. I think the important thing for me was to not just learn the words, not just learn the concepts of human design, but to actually understand, kind of at a somatic level, at the body level. It's like, what do these words actually feel like in actual life? So anyway, I jumped right into studying in '98 and became certified as an analyst right away. And my first course with Ra was in Taos. It was the 384 lines. So it was sort of a backwards way of learning from the bottom up, so to speak, starting with the detail, but that was actually perfect for me because I am a detail person. And you know, I was really just fascinated with the knowledge. I had only had a little bit of background with astrology and the I Ching. I had dabbled in astrology, but found it a little bit too open to interpretation, and I didn't feel that was my strong point. So human design really fit for me because it is a logical system, and if you see my chart, you'd see that I have a very logical mind, and so I need that kind of structure, and this really did it for me. So after beginning to take courses, I took almost all the courses that Ra was teaching for quite a long time, certainly all the ones in the United States. And then when he went back to Europe in around 2000, I think it was 2001, I went over for quite a few courses. So those were always exciting. It was always fabulous to get together with others that sort of spoke the human design language. Mm-hmm. So I was certified to teach in 2000, and after that trained some analysts in the US. My background before meeting human design, the last career that I was still working in at the time was as a psychotherapist. I was trained at a Buddhist university, Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. And I had been practicing partly in private practice, but mostly in a local mental health clinic in Boulder. I did that for about 8 years. And then after I met human design, I wanted to jump into that. And so I left that and got more into just doing human design. Later on, what I started being frustrated with was wanting my clients to take the information, their human design readings, to a much deeper level, because for me personally, it wasn't satisfying enough to just do readings and leave it at that. I'm about half the human design wheel. I'm sure many of you already know, but if you don't, there's quarters in the wheel, and one of those quarters is called duality. And in my design, over half of my activations in my chart are in that quarter of duality. So for me, very much everything is about relationship. And that's extremely important to me and in my life. And so I really wanted a deeper relationship with my clients. So I decided in 2004 to begin combining my work in psychotherapy with human design. And at this point, I don't do any psychotherapeutic work with anyone if I don't have their chart. I just feel that it's just critical for us as psychotherapists to know who someone is and working with them, so that we're not guiding them to a wrong way of deciphering what's right for them, encouraging them to be something that they're not. And so I found that combination of tools, the human design and the psychotherapy, as I was trained, are really, really powerful. The psychotherapy sort of addresses the conditioning that we've had in our lives. And human design, of course, as we all know, is the most amazing tool I've ever found to guide us to being who we are. So that's been really rewarding. I still do a lot of just plain readings for people. you know, there are those that don't need psychotherapy or don't want psychotherapy, so that's just fine. Definitely don't need to force them into that. But that's been, you know, certainly something that has fascinated me over time. So, yeah, I think that probably pretty much sums up where I'm at, and I have a lot of respect for using human design in the context of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that has been incredibly powerful, both having had Ra do several relationship readings for me personally in my personal life, and then having worked with couples where I haven't found anything that so clearly distinguishes for people, you know, who are they in relationship with. And it's really been, I don't know, transformative, I guess would be the right word, when somebody actually sees that, oh, this is who my partner is, you know, these things I've been trying to change in them are not going to change. And I just find human design to be such a tool for acceptance of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I also find that, you know, sometimes you look at two charts and they look like, oh, wow, these go together beautifully. And other times you look at two charts and you say, oh, this is really tough. But I've also found that with human design, you know, because it teaches us tolerance for one another.
Mm-hmm.
To a large extent, it just shows us where to not beat our heads against the wall. That it really facilitates acceptance of the other, and therefore I found that in many times relationship charts that don't appear to go together in real life, they're doing just fine because they actually can accept one another. So it's an exciting area to focus on, and so I'm delighted to be able to share that with everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I suppose it's no surprise when I now say that Susan is going to teach the partnership level, because that's really, you know, what you are and what your interest is. And it's, of course, wonderful to have a variety of teachers who really can and want to teach exactly their favorite topic. So that's, you know, my whole theme about life should be fun and should be fulfilling. Yes, well, then you have to do what you enjoy doing. And it's, of course, a pleasure to be able to, get that done. Okay, thank you, Susan. So, me, yes, well, I've been around since 1993. I used to be an interior designer before. I was not at all into esoterics. I was sort of a little bit interested, but, you know, I couldn't trust and believe any of all this stuff. And then I met Ra, and suddenly, okay, so he made me look into this fascinating system. And I went to an evening introductory lecture on a Friday night, and on Saturday morning I started the training. That was in '93, and I haven't stopped since. So it is, as both of you said before, the best that ever happened to me, the most interesting thing, never gets boring, and it explains everything in life, and that is very, very fulfilling and soothing and makes me very happy. And I love my job, and it's, it's the perfect place. My speciality is the crosses. That's one thing that I was always interested in. And Ra once jokingly said, if I hadn't been such a nuisance, he would have never came out with the crosses, which is of course not true, but I was really nagging and asking, and he used to give us just the Sphinx and the Vessel of Love. He would just mention them, and then of course I was okay. But if this configuration has a name, then all the others. So slowly but surely, I collected all the cross names, and then finally, I think it was in 2000, he taught the cross course for the first time. And I had to go to America for the first time. And if it hadn't been for the cross course, I would have never gone. And that's how I met Susan, and I could stay with her, and we had a wonderful time. So I'm going to teach the crosses, which is my specialty. And I suppose that goes with my individual design. I am the cross of planning in the first quarter. So it's really, this is my time. This is my era. I represent personally the background frequency. And this is something, of course, before human design, I could have never put it into words, obviously not. But this, supporting and sharing and structuring communities, this is so natural to me and for me. So I'm very curious about this new Phoenix time. But I also realized this is going to be the end of my, I'm not going to be familiar in the world anymore. I assume, we'll see. But anyway, so I am still in this organizing and structuring. That's why I love running a school. That's why I love running a national organization. And just like Susan, I became a teacher within very quickly. It took, I think, 8 days in the old days when we became analysts, and then another course to become a teacher. So that was very, very quick. We started with the details, but then all three of us witnessed the development of the teaching and how the knowledge was sort of prepared for passing on, and that was a very, very interesting process. I'll show you in the next slide. And the other thing I'm going to teach is the last level, rave reading and keynoting. Again, structuring a reading. That's very much my theme and my interest. So, you'll have 3 teachers who really are going to be involved with what they love best, and therefore what they can do best. So this is the 3 of us. Okay. So we have 2 new people joining us. Let's see if I can. Maketa came in, and Senaida. Welcome to 2 of you. All of you, if there's anything you want to say or ask, you can just turn on your microphone and jump in. It's just a small group, so we will be able to respond. Oh, somebody's saying something. Hang on, there's a chat. Janice asks if I'm going to share the charts. Sorry, no, I'm not going to share the charts, but you can see them on our website. So on here, down on the right bottom, you have the web address, and there you will find the 3 of us under Human Design Professionals, and there you can see the charts. Yes, it would have been a good idea, but it did not occur to me. So sorry about that, but you can find it on the website. Okay, so let's take a quick look. At our way of teaching, because it needs a little explanation why we are doing it so very differently than the international and the sort of, so to say, official human design. I'm not going to go into politics. That's a very touchy subject, but we in the German-speaking world, we've been running 2 parallel streams of education. We have what we call small education, the analyst training, and we have the professional education, or the large education. And this happened quite naturally because in the beginning, there was just 2 courses, really. It was the Living Your Design and the sort of advanced Living Your Design, and then you were an analyst. And as Susan was saying, our first courses were all the lines and all the gates, and no type, no profile, no strategy. So it was, yeah, we really started at the very bottom with the details, and it was difficult to handle. People got the impression, yes, this is interesting, and this has something to do with me. But usually after reading, they would ask, okay, that was very interesting, and what do I do now? So, it had to change. Ra had to change the way of education to show people the practical side, the what to do with the knowledge. So we had our yearly meetings in Ibiza, and at one of these early meetings, Ra presented this original way of education. So by then, Living Your Design, ABC, and Rave cartography were well established. That used to be the beginning, that still is the beginning. So this is the same worldwide, more or less. And then represented these 4 levels of education. So it was the gates, it was partnership, crosses, and keynoting and rave reading. These were the 4 levels of the original education. All 4 levels together took about 15 days. In the old days, training was live. There was no internet, or not, not in this way. So it was live courses, and it's used to be about 15 days. Now, the German-speaking national organization, we were the only ones who already had analysts and teachers who could implement this new kind of education right away. And that's what we did. And, Martin was one of the teachers then. So, represented it in Ibiza. And I think it was a few months later when we started to, tell our students that we already had then that this is the new kind of education. And we started with this shorter, compressed way of education. And it went very well. People loved it. It really made it possible to teach all the vast aspects in a comprehensive and overview way. I think it was about 2 years later at one of the next Ibiza meetings that Ra presented his idea of education, the same 4 levels. So that was already clear. He had already laid that out. But then he presented the depth in which he thought it could be or should be taught. So it was the same 4 levels, but in much, 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 much more depth. So you can see originally it is 15 days of teaching. We reckon about 5 hours of teaching per day. With what Ra presented, it was a minimum of 50 days. And, trying to teach all the lines, you really, if you want to do it properly, and if the lines are taught and not, books handed out, but if you have a teacher explaining you every single line, it should take, 25, 30 days. I've witnessed it twice. It is an incredible course. It just feeds the mind, and it leaves very little time and way for getting into your body. So for me, that's something that should come later. It's something that should sort of, once you know it all, once you have a good overview idea, then you should dive into all the details. But anyway, of course, there is always people, we have the detail people who love all the depth. So that's why very soon we started to offer this large education as well. So, for those who wanted to have an overview and wanted to become analysts who are licensed to give foundation readings, they would take the small education. And those who wanted to dive deeper, those who wanted to give all these different readings, who wanted to have all the details, especially about the lines, they could take the large education. And we structure it so that you can easily switch from one to the other. So, the basis of ATL1, the basis of the analyst training, is the same basis for the professional training. And then they just, add 20 more days to go in all the depth, to go in all the lines. So it is the same content, but in much more depth. And what we are offering now online is the small education. Because, as I said, I think it is a good idea to get the overview information first, to be able to see if you can work with it, if you like it, if you have customers, if you can make money with it. I mean, after all, there's a lot of money to spend in human design. So it is necessary to make money. It is necessary to check Can I do it? Do I enjoy it? Do I have, people enjoying it as well? So for me, that's a perfect start. And after that, after your first couple of 100 readings, then is the perfect time, in my opinion, to go on and dive into the depth. But right now, the training round that we are talking here and now, this is the small education, which will take about 15 full teaching days, but of course we're doing it online. In the end, again, we advise a little time of digesting and practicing and sort of really working with it. And when students feel they are ready, they can take a little exam, and then they get registered and licensed from my German-speaking human design school to be analysts. I also run this international website where people can present themselves and their offers. So, I really, I'm very proud to be an independent organization and to present an education as Ra had intended it to, because I'm a 4/6, so fourth line can be very straightforward and very stubborn. It is my purpose and it is my intent to keep the system the way Ra taught it and to stick to his teaching and to his wisdom and not mix it with all sorts of things that happen all over the place. So I have a lot of what shall I say, a lot of criticism for what the IHDS or what Jovian is doing. So I left them after many years of trying to correct it. I'm 1858, so for a long time I tried and show them and prove to them that our way is working better, and we turn out all these good students and professionals. But anyway, it was no point. So we are independent now, and I take great pride in running an independent human design school that really sticks to what Ra Uru Hu personally taught us and how he worked with us. Okay, so that is my little overview on our two streams of education, and this small analyst education, this is what we are going to offer. So if you have any questions to this particularly, now would be the time, and then we will quickly talk about the 4 levels. So
yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Ilse. I was interested in hearing about what your criticism was of the PTL training. You said that he did not come up with the PTL training, or he did after he came up.
After. This is what he originally started with, and then 2 years later he said, all the lines should be taught. So again, this is a question of what you want. Of course, the lines are incredibly important, and of course, any human design professional at one point at their training and their human design life will have to dig into the lines. There's no question about that. Please don't get me wrong. But after the very basic courses, spending 20 or 30 days digging into the depth of each line before you know all the rest about human design, for me, is the wrong timing. So I think you should have a good overview. You should know about partnership. You should know about crosses. You should be able to do a good keynoting. You should be able to give people a good, stable, helpful, practical foundation reading. And in a foundation reading, you should not talk about any detail of a line. That comes much, 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 much later. So for me, it's really a evolution, a development. So start with the line key, start with understanding gate and lines in general to be able to tell people in a practical way how to, arrive at a correct decision. And then when you can do that, when you're really involved in all of this, when you've got it in your system, when you when you start living your design, then you can dig into endless depths. And of course, it doesn't, as you know, it doesn't stop with line. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper. There is no end in human design. But in my understanding, a training cannot start in the depth. You have to have a general idea what it is all about, and then you decide, okay, I want to dig deeper here, I want to specialize in the lines or in business or in health or in, you know, whatever. But before you know what to specialize in, you have to, you know, have a good idea about everything. So that's why I'm a big fan of this, of starting with the small education. Okay.
So
I always say that this is just not learning the leaves before you know the tree.
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's sort of, so it's basically what you're saying is that the ATL is like getting the skeleton, and then
Exactly.
the PTL is like going into the nervous system and the
Absolutely.
respiratory.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so you what you feel is, what you're espousing is that the ATL is the way to go after the, you know, LYD rape cartography.
Yeah.
And then once that is the true professional foundation.
Exactly.
And then go into the PTL, which is the more expansive,
Exactly.
advanced version.
Exactly. You put it beautifully. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. Okay, so no other questions, then let's move on.
Actually, if I can make a comment.
Yes, of course.
Just so I can understand that I've understood this correctly. It's just because what you're saying is that this is knowledge that is meant for the body to grasp,
Mm-hmm.
that for the brain, and that it's something that one must evolve with over time in order to truly be it, rather than just mentally
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
spew it out. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, because it is such an interesting logical system, it is so easy to understand it with your mind and think, now I've got it. And then 5 years later, you notice, okay, well, that was just a mind trip. So there is this incredible change from yes, I got it, I understood it, it's, you know, it's not so complicated, you have to learn all, you know, all the information, that's not such a big deal. But to get it into your body and live by it, that's the big deal, and that takes many, many years.
And what that is essentially what this knowledge really is about language given to the world of frequency, which is what reality is. And so to be able to get it in the body is to be able to actually see the world of frequency.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, very nicely put. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Good. Great. Well, then let's have a look at the 4 levels. And level 2 and level 3, this is something that's really a personal a taste in what order you want to do it. Originally, it was a partnership and then crosses. But over many, many years of working with it, and from my side, especially because I love the crosses so much, and I think they are so important because they give you the essence and the overview. So in our training, usually we turn it around. Usually you always start with the gate. So ATL or PTL 1 is always about gates. That's the basis, and that has to be the start. But then in the second level, now we usually teach the crosses. And after the crosses, we look at partnership. But there is nothing wrong with doing partnership first and doing crosses afterwards. So that's really a question of taste. I prefer to do it this way. And in the end, keynoting, putting it all together, and the technical structure we're reading, that's obviously the end. So 1 and 4, they are fixed, and 2 and 3 could be changed around. So that's, you know, that's really a question of taste. Okay, so let's look at level 1. This is the one that is, you know, starting soon in mid-January. We are planning to start it if we get enough clients. We do not start the courses if we don't have a minimum of participants, because, you know, usually you lose some people on the way. So if we really want to offer a complete round, we do need a minimum of something around 10 participants. So let's see if we manage that. If not, we can postpone it a little bit. I'm quite hopeful that we will get it together. So Martin will start with level 1. And Martin, you can talk about it in a second. Just from my side, I always ask Martin and invite Martin to teach level 1 because, you know, everybody or every teacher can teach and talk about the gates. But with Martin, of course, you get this wonderful addition of his many, many years of health experience, being a health practitioner. So in Martin's level 1, you get the human design information about the gate, plus this wonderful extra of his way of looking at it from the health perspective, which I think is an incredible gift and an incredible extra. And I'm so happy to have you in my organization, because that's something you can learn nowhere else in the world. And, you know, just to go on with this a little bit further, Ra used to sit in some of Martin's courses. So, you know, I think Martin is the only teacher who had Ra as a student in his classes when he talked about his application of the knowledge. So that really shows the development and the depth we are dealing with here. So, okay, so with this wonderful introduction, Martin, would you like to say a little bit about your level 1?
Yeah, basically you told everything.
Sorry.
Yeah, I love it because you see, I just give you one aspect for it. Most people, they learn the root center just to be the pressure center, and they relate it mostly to adrenaline mechanism. And I always say, okay, if it's adrenaline, we don't need 9 gates. So why do we have 9 gates? There must be something different. So it's helpful to differentiate it. And when we move through the hexagrams of the root center, you will see it has nothing to do with pressure. You can put yourself under pressure, that's possible. But when you relate it to what's going on in your body, this is just an option if you are existentially in danger or whatsoever, but not basically. And it helps not only you, but as well for the clients you have, just when you know a little bit more about the gates and what they really mean. How they are functioning. So just to be more precise and more helpful, and not only just to have specific labels which are generalized and not differentiated. So what I love to do with this is just to see it more different. We will walk through the gates according to the circuits. So that's one, like what I said with the tree, so that you have one part of the tree and left and right and in the middle and this and that, but also to see it in the context of the center and to see it in its basic meaning in your physical reality. And it gives you a deeper understanding for it. So what I said just in the beginning, so that it's not just a vocabulary or a label, it's something really you can feel, you can taste, it's something in a specific way, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I can promise you will have a lot of aha. That's so. And that's the reason why I love it, because this body graph is so wonderful. And in terms of Ra and me, because yes, he was sitting there as a student, and sometimes afterwards he was just, if he was angry because of a manifester in a polite way, but so he said, yes, I know you're dynamic, I'm a mechanic. So and this was the point where we really came together. Just to see, okay, it's a mechanic, and the mechanic is so important. Mm-hmm. But the mechanic is something that has its own dynamic in life. And I'm a dynamic, so therefore, okay.
Dynamic
That's
Martin,
it.
yes.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, so level 2 in this version is going to be my course about the crosses. This is my great love. For some reason, I don't know why, I suppose because it is of this cross of planning thing, but for some reason that was the one thing that kept interesting me always and always and always, and I kept asking and nagging, and finally in 2000 Ra taught the crosses for the first time. And for me, I like to call it the headline for life. And I do all kinds of readings. I do 15-minute overview readings. And even in the overview reading, I always, always, always mention the cross. I might not mention it, I might not name it, I might not talk to the client, this is your cross and it means so-and-so, but I know what the cross is, and I can sort of fit the whole design around it. So it is the essence, it is really the essence. 70% of what we are is represented in the cross. So there is no reading. There should not be any kind of analysis without looking at the cross. And you can give an incredibly detailed cross reading, look in all the, depth and lines and colors, so you can go, as always, very, very deep with the cross. That's not necessary in a foundation reading, but you have to show the person it is their purpose, really. And when I heard about my cross of planning, I used to be an interior designer. I wrote out invoices for design work long before human design existed. So it was so funny because I think, well, yes, that has something to do with my life. And with cross of planning, it's very simple and very obvious. But everybody's cross is present, is represented in their life. And that's what I really make a point of teaching. You can look at the cross in a very simple way. You have to understand the center and the gates and the circuitry, and you can check and see, are they connected? How are they connected? Are they spread out in the body graph? So I look at it in a quite mechanical, structural way. And after that, even without reading the big, thick cross book, you can get a feeling and an impression of what this overall headline is for the specific person, and that should be part of every single reading. So this is my absolute favorite course. And I'm not sure, but I think I am the first teacher ever who taught an online cross course. Many, many years ago, I had to go to my son because he only had internet. I didn't have internet then at home. And I taught 3 evenings of crosses online, and I was nervous as hell. So that was, it's my long time love affair with the crosses. And so that's a very, very important part of the training. And it really shows the essence. So you have to have an idea about your cross to, take the next step. It starts with type and strategy and, authority and the essence, and then, how does this show, and how, and so on and so on. But it's a very, very important part. Okay, so this is my level 2. It is scheduled for spring and summer next year. So depending, if Martin manages to get the level 1 done by February, we'll have a little break and continue. So that's roughly the time frame for our level 2. Next part is partnership, which is scheduled, a couple of months after level 2, and brings us to Susan, who is going to teach her favorite subject. Susan, would you like to say a few words to this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is really exciting for me. When people come in for a reading, they almost never come without questions about partnership. Even if they're coming for an individual reading, they say, well, but I wonder how this works with my partner, my husband, my wife, my daughter, whatever. So it seems that everyone, of course, has a concern about relationship, and human design is just incredibly helpful with that, as I mentioned earlier. So in this course, we look at the various aspects of partnership. So we look at just individually, how suited is any one person for partnership? Is it an easy thing for them? Is it a difficult thing for them? Not that most people ever could go through life without some sort of relationship with others. But, for some it's easier than others. So we look at specific things like type and profile and your type of definition in the sense of single definition, split definition, how many splits, that sort of thing, the circuitry, and of course the crosses. Do people's sense of purpose have anything to do with one another? And we look at how that works in the quarters. It's also true that we are constantly in relationship to the transits, the movement of the planets and the sun and the earth, all the time are influencing us. So we are constantly in relationship to those. So that's a perfect pairing for this course. And I mentioned before, so much of relationship and how well we do within relationship really has to do with awareness. And so, this kind of information, of course, increases awareness dramatically. As Martin and Ilse have pointed out, it's very mechanical. And when people actually get that, oh, these are the mechanics, this is not going to change. Oh, I can give up on trying to change my partner or letting them try to change me. So, yeah, I'm very excited to teach this.
Great, and I'm very happy to have you because you are again one of these specialists. Having been involved with partnership for such a long time. So that's a perfect foundation for teaching. Teaching should be based on experience. The knowledge is one part. It's important, of course, but without the actual living experience, all of this is pointless.
Yes.
Okay, Andrea joined us. Hello, welcome. You're just in time for the end, but you can listen to the recording. Welcome, welcome. Okay, level 4. This is going to be my course again, and I plan on involving Martin and Susan. We have to work this out, but this is a big course. This takes, it's really 2 big parts. So I like to have guest speakers and teachers. So I plan on having a lot of interaction there. In my last round of training, my students asked if they could, they wanted to be together live. So for the keynoting, 7 of them came to Vienna. I have a little summer house on a lake. So we spent some really nice time on the lake in our summer house, doing keynoting. So that's always a possibility. Online is nice with all these different nationalities, but if the students want to do something live, that's definitely a possibility. Agruti, you are here as well. Hello, hello, hello. Just at the end. Anyway. Okay, so keynoting is the first part. In the keynoting level, we really have to take all the information that we have built up until then, put it together, and then take it back up to the surface, because it's always the same. You can dive incredibly deep in human design, but if you want to give a newcomer a reading, you have to stick to the surface. You have to speak in a language that is understandable. You have to reach people. You have to tell them in a way that they can grasp and take. So the keynoting is really putting it all together, connecting themes, painting the overall picture. And that's, really the art. Keynoting, good keynoting is, I suppose, one of the most difficult bits of giving a reading. So there's a lot of practice to do. So that's the part one. And the part two, the rave reading, is really about the technicalities. What is, what should be the content of a reading? What goes in? Do you need an intro? What do you have to tell people in the beginning? So, the structure, the technical things. And then the equipment, you need to have a recording equipment. You have to be able to edit MP3s and send them. So the practical, technical stuff, that is also something that we are going to look at in the rave reading in the last part. After that, it's up to you to practice, and it's up to you to have many readings and do a lot of practice. And when you are ready, when you feel you are ready, then you can let me know, and we can arrange a little test, which is really a little test. It's no big deal. If you've gone through this kind of education, you really should know your stuff. So it's just a confirmation that you are ready to go out into the world and help spread human design and help improve life for everybody who gets in contact with it. So this is the biggest course. This is around 8 days. So it is 18 to 20 online evening sessions. So that's quite a large chunk, which I usually do in two parts to have a little break in between. And that is scheduled for the beginning of 2020. So we're really talking about the future, but I want to give you a clear perspective. And I do, of course, intend to finish this round like we did with the last one. So this is the plan. This is what we will do and want to do. If you are interested, so please let us know. Okay, so this was everything from my side. I will turn on all your audios again. You have turned it off. Okay, some have turned off your microphones yourself, so you can turn it on. So if you have any questions, comments, yeah, here we go. Maybe let's start another way. Nikita, you're still here. Nikita is one of the students who just finished the 4 levels. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your experience?
Oh, yes, with pleasure. I have to say that I had a lot of insights during the course. First of all, I liked the interaction in the class. I've never been in such classes in human design. Usually you have a talking head, just talking and telling stories, but here you are involved. And I like this way. Actually, I don't like to be noticed and to participate, but actually it gives a lot of involvement and of your own insights. So and I hate even more. I hate homeworks, but once you are in the class, you give, and this is a kind of synthesis that is born inside of you, because telling a story is kind of analysis of what's happening on the level of hexagram relationships and so on. But once you have to say something, you collect all together, all pieces together, and something is born inside of you. And this is the way of fixing the knowledge, in my opinion. And we had a lot of wonderful insights, one of which was very funny. Do you remember, Ilse, this theme, the name of the channel of preservation?
Yeah.
That was just wonderful, because once we noticed that if you can imagine this symmetry between 59.6, the channel of mating, and on the other side you have this channel of caring, 27.50, the channel of preservation, and we just discovered that this is the preservation from having babies. This is, so on one part you have this mating, and on the other part it's like a counterweight. You have this preservation theme, not having too much babies.
And it was the funny thing that both in Russian and in German, preservativ, the actual word, means contraception. Yeah. I don't think that's so clear in English, but it was such a funny, Russian and German are quite different languages, and in both our language, what is it in Russian?
Yes, this is the word, preservative, yeah.
So that was, we had a lot of fun about that.
Yeah. And it's like not only seeing the map, but it is about seeing the landscape, the real landscape behind the map. Behind the mechanics, you see the dynamics. You see the life. Yeah, and I was listening to your presentation, and I thought, well, I'd like to have this course another time.
You can. I mean, that's that's easy. You can repeat easily with us. That's Once we reach hundreds of participants, we'll have to restrict that. But so far, it should be no problem. Okay.
Well, I'll just add to that I do believe that yes, these kinds of conversations really stimulate a lot of knowledge, and having been taught by the talking head himself, it was so important to be able to have gatherings where we could actually digest the knowledge and actually get it down from our heads and into our bodies and back up again. So I think that's fabulous.
Yeah. And it's also, you have, a couple of people commenting on the same thing. So you get all these aspects and all these different nuances, and that's helpful for everybody. So, I learn a lot in every course I teach just by the comments I get. So it's a mutual helping each other and taking a next step together and coming further together. So it's a very, very satisfying process.
And I have something to add, Ilse, also. I think that you are the only teacher in human design which teaches how to use microphone, sound recording, how to pack the recording, and very simple technical stuff. This is also very important.
This is this is the original content. Ra was very clear that the teacher has to tell the students what kind of, equipment to buy. So that, for me, it's obvious, but still that is, I have seen human design professionals who cannot send you an MP3. Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. So that's, you have to know the basic practical skills as well. That's part of your job. For me, it's quite obvious.
Yeah, especially in our domain, where we have all of us are just a bunch of non-professionals. I mean, we have such a lot of people from all over themes in the life. I'm a graphic designer, and other people are astrologists and others, and there are still these simple, basic things that should be done professionally.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, Susan, you were going to say something, were you?
Oh, I was just going to say, having struggled through figuring all that stuff out myself, and you know, of course, in the time that we've been involved in human design, you know, the modalities have changed so much. You know, we went from cassette tape to you know, all kinds of other convolutions of mediums to distribute. So having had to figure that out myself, and I don't have a lot of patience for the mechanics. Yeah, I agree. This is incredibly helpful and important to have some guidance with that.
Yeah. Yes, you're going to get that. Okay. Okay, so any other comments, questions? Take advantage of having us here.
Actually, I do. I just recently saw a video of Zeno on YouTube, and I was wanting to hear, you know, you comment on what Zeno talks about regarding how he taught the knowledge when he first came out, and then several years later in the early 90s, he suddenly switched it up to include a lot of this extra nomenclature and so forth. And can you comment or?
Yeah, easily. I don't know if I've seen this, but I've had a talk with Zeno a while ago, and I met her many years ago. This is really a funny story, because yes, in the beginning, Ra taught human design differently. As you know, as we're all saying, we started taking a course where Ra taught all the lines. And after those first years, it was obvious that we did not know what to do with it. So the most common question after these first old original readings was people saying, okay, what do I do with it? It is interesting. Yes, sounds really fascinating. But what do I do? So Ra, we talked about this many times, and he said he was so surprised that we did not get it. He thought once you are told what the picture on this body graph shows, then you would know what to do with it. And of course, nobody did, you know. So that's why he invented, and that's the wrong word, why he came up with type and strategy and with profile. He simply gave us a practical way of applying the formula. Because Ra was teaching the formula as he got it, and because he got the complete information, and he's, you know, he was a very clever person. He got it in a complete way, but teaching it split up into all these courses in details. All of the students did not know how to put it together. So Ra was forced to adapt his teaching into a practical, applicable form, and that's how the changing occurred. He did not change any of the content. So, you know, I was there in '93, so this, I think it was the second year that Ra was teaching. So, you know, I've really seen the development of the education right from the beginning, and Martin has been, you know, there right from the very beginning. There is no change in the content. There is just an adaptation, a way of making it practical and usable. So Zeno's anger with Ra is, you know, it's a very personal, very sad story. And, you know, I definitely do not agree with her at all. Okay.
So, I mean, do you see any value then in teaching how the way that he first shared it, without all of the things that he developed, in terms of what it seems like what he developed was a way to understand what it is you're seeing?
Exactly. Well, this is happening. If you take the professional level 1, for instance, if you take these 25 days of going through lines, this is exactly what Ra taught in the very beginning. But without an overall understanding of the whole structure and functioning, the details of the line, you know, you cannot grasp it. Let me give you one example. There was one course in one of our summer schools. This must have been in the late 90s. Ra was trying to teach the variables, colors and tones for the first time. So he came to our mill then in the summer, and he started the course, and he started with bass, and he taught bass and tone and color. And at one lunch break, he said to me, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" And he said, "This is a dead audience." I said, "What do you mean?" So he said he had never ever been in a course where there was no interaction. There was no response from the students. We were about, I don't know, 15 people, that sort of size group. And we were all sitting there trying to figure out what he was on about. And it was interesting. So we listened to what he was saying, but it was obvious that nobody understood what he was on about. And at the end of the course, he said, "Okay, well, this obviously did not work. I cannot work from the detail up. I have to work from the line, from the gate level down." And after this, he had never taught it this way, you know, from the base up. He always taught it from the line down. And so that was an experience that he had to make himself. Ra always said, "I have to teach to know what I know." So I was an organizer for many, many years. So Ra would send me an email saying he would come to my summer school and he would teach, I don't know.
Hi, honey.
Hang on, Jagruti. I have to turn your microphone off. Okay, that was it. So he would send me an email. "These are the 3 courses." I said, "Okay, what is the content?" And he said, "I don't know." I said, "Come on, I have to send in, make a newsletter. I have to invite people. I have to tell them what the course is all about." And he said, "Well, think of something." So, you know, it was it was always a very tricky thing for me to invite people for a course that Ra was going to teach, and nobody knew really what the content was going to be, because Ra said, "Well, this is the topic. This course is called, you know, whatever, and I will hear what I will have to say." So this was he had an unconscious 43. So Ra did not know what was in his head. He had to teach it. He had to talk it to get it out, and then to know, okay, this is what I know. So this was a very, it's not so unusual, but it was difficult if you can watch it. It was interesting to see this is somebody who knows that he does not know what is in his mind. But after he teaches it, it's been out, it's been spoken, it's into the world, and then he knows. So that was his mechanical way of functioning, and that's how he developed all of the training. So yes, there was a big adaptation over the first, I would say, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. But it was definitely not a change. It was just finding the right structure so that other people who do not have the formula in their head could take it.
Yes, I would also say, you know, having experienced his teachings over many years, that there was a refinement to how he taught what he taught, And I think this is normal for any teacher. When you begin teaching, you're not as good at teaching as you become later. And for someone like Ra, who really experienced the knowledge, firsthand in his experience with the voice, I can only imagine how difficult that could be to put that into words that the rest of us could understand who had not had that experience.
Exactly.
But my sense was that after he left New Mexico and ended the partnership with Zeno and Chaitanya, that there was a lot of additional details that were added to what he taught, but none of it felt like it was outside of the framework that he laid out in the beginning.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so that's just what I'd like to add to.
Yeah, absolutely agree. This is exactly how I see it and how I feel it. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. I have the same thing. I know certain things and I don't even know what I know, and then when I hear myself, it sounds like the truth, and that's when I know, yes, that is correct and true.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you.
Isn't it fascinating if you talk about this and then you see somebody with an unconscious 4323? Ra had this unconscious mind, this individual unconscious mind. He was the freak who was able, and he was designed to share to empower us with his unconscious individual insights. So this unusual development of knowledge, we can see it in the structure, in his structure. And, that sort of, I find this is absolutely incredible and so interesting and fascinating.
Okay, and so what I found, as a 1-3 projector, after sort of listening to his classes that are sold at Jovian, that, where he goes through the bass, tone, color, and it almost seems to make the lines seem to make more sense. Look, the entire knowledge makes more sense after actually going bottom up. Like as a 1-3, going from the foundational up rather than going from what is on the surface into the depth seems to be extremely confusing. And so can you talk about why there is no one that is teaching, bass, tone, color up and continuing to do it his way only, considering that, we all are able to grasp information and knowledge, new knowledge differently. Not everyone gets it, top down.
Yeah. Well, I think it was just really Ra's personal experience that it did not work. It was very clear to him, and we were, in those days, we were absolutely dedicated, fascinated. So, he had an audience of really involved human design freaks. So, we loved every word he said. And we did not get it. So it was his very clear experience that teaching it from the bottom up didn't catch us. It did not reach us. We were all willing and interested, and we didn't get it. So that was, his experience, and he communicated that quite clearly. So that's why it has been taught from the bottom, from the line down. But of course, yes, you are right. People's mind and teaching experience are different. So yes, probably some people would understand it the other way around. And the other thing is, what you're talking about, I suppose you listen to these advanced courses after you've been really involved in human design in general. So if you teach somebody who is, who really knows the general stuff, if you teach them from the base up, that's of course different, and that would work and should work. But then it was new ground and new stuff, and then you have to really sort of get the overall picture first and dive deeper after that. But, there's nothing wrong doing it the other way around. It just doesn't seem to be practical for most people.
I would like to just add to that, that one of the things that I heard Ross say, I'm sure we all heard him say over and over again, is, you know, just how powerful our minds are, and how our minds will never give up trying to run our shows, you know, to try to run our lives. And I think that the difficulty of teaching from the bottom up is that it really is so much information for the mind, that the mind can get so busy with the details that we forget that the power of human design to improve anyone's lives really comes from strategy and authority,
Absolutely.
which is out of the larger picture. It's out of type, you know, it's out of definition. And so, you know, I never heard a class that Ra ever taught where he did not end always with, you know, follow your strategy, honor your authority.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that was a message that was so important that he never strayed from that. So I think you really have to be careful not to get too enamored of the detail that you forget that, oh, actually what's of most use in all of this information is to live correctly as ourselves. And that comes from honoring your authority and following your strategy. So.
Yeah, very true. Thank you. That was a very important input. That's very, very true. That is really what always comes down to. Okay.
Thank you. And so I just lost my question. Never mind.
We can still hear you.
Well, yeah, so the basis of strategy, well, the basis of the inner authority comes from tone, correct?
Yeah, but technically it comes from tone. In your life, in your practical application of, you know, you as a projector, knowing that you have to be invited, knowing that you have to be seen, that's something that's very simple in a way. You know, it doesn't really, you don't need to know about your tone to be able to realize, okay, if I jump into something without being invited, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? So your whole functioning has to start with realizing I'm a projector, I have to wait to be seen. That's sort of the only possible and only successful starting point. Yes, once you get that, once you can live that, of course, it's incredibly interesting to look at, you know, where exactly, what frequency this is caused by, where it comes from. But to start with, waiting for the invitation, that's a very simple, you know, just wait and take your time. That's very, very simple. Not easy, but it's very simple. Okay. Okay, I think if there is no more questions, we have some very strange noise coming on in the time. I don't know where it comes from. I think that if there's no more question, I think we'll call it a day.
Actually, I do have another question.
Yes.
Do you actually teach how to create the chart without the software?
This is something that should be taught in, hang on. Yes, Dagmar, this was your microphone. Yes, thank you, Janice, for the there was some very, very strange noise from your microphone, Dagmar. I muted you. If you want to say something, you can turn it on again. Drawing a chart without the software, this should be taught really in the Living Your Design course or in level 1. I'm not quite sure. This should be part of the very basic training, and it always is part of our basic training here in the German-speaking school. Many things have been lost and diluted over time for some various reasons. I'm trying hard not to touch politics, but that really should be taught in the very first classes. we can do that. I mean, this is something we can fit in. It takes about an hour to show you how to do that. So we could fit that in more or less any time if you're interested. That's no big deal. But you should have done that in Martin, do you know which level it is? Is it Living Your Design or ABC where you should do that? Martin.
You did.
Ah, Martin?
You turned
Martin?
me off.
Yes,
Yes.
now, yes.
Okay, yes. No, I can't say it exactly.
But it is in the beginning, definitely, isn't it?
Yeah, that's important.
I remember right at the beginning telling us, bring your colored pencil, make sure they are sharpened, and make sure you have clean fingernails.
Yeah. And don't color outside of the lines.
Exactly.
So it was really funny. Yeah. And in the beginning, just to say, when I met Ra and I was trained, we didn't have even a computer program, so
Exactly.
I had to.
We drew up our charts.
Yeah, all the things. And when I was fast in the end, it took me 40 minutes to
exactly
color it. Yeah.
And because I had no idea about astrology, I always mixed up Pisces and the twins, the two, what do you call them in English? Gemini. So my charts usually ended up wrong because I mixed up the zodiac signs. Yeah.
Well, I took my LYD with Becky Markley online and the ABC and cartography with Alok, and none of them taught me, so I have no idea how to actually come up with calculations to create the chart. So I'd certainly be very interested in learning that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Zenaida, that should be no problem. If you join any course, I'm sure we can fit that in, because that's really no big deal. I just have to show you how this works. That's really, if you join any class or if we can even do that as a separate little evening one. So that's very easy. I'll take a note of it. We can definitely do that anytime.
If there's anyone else interested, who's here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I took LYD and ABCs and also have never been shown that myself. So this is Janice.
Yeah. Well, this is the detail, the German detail, love for detail. We've all our teachers have been doing this and teaching this. This has been part of the training forever, and it's an important. It gives you this extra feeling. If you draw up a chart yourself and you color in the red first, and then you color in the black by hand, by the time you've done that, you already have some kind of feel for that chart and for that person. So it's an interesting process. Yeah, everybody should be able to do that. We can definitely fit that in. Okay.
I mean, because this is very important, and I had the same question: how to draw it by hand without how to make all these calculations without the software.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we did have the software. We did have an astrological software. So you have to start with an astrological chart. If you don't have an astrological software, then you need real ephemeris, the big, huge, big ephemeris, and take your data from there. So, this is quite a procedure. It's not difficult. It's quite a complicated and long procedure to do. But yeah, we can fit that in.
Because again, we're going into the future now, but in 2084, when the sun incarnates, what I received is that a lot of the satellites and the internet and a lot of technology is going to be disrupted and destroyed even. And the ability to have the internet and software do calculations, they're going to be dying out, because that's all part of the process of planning.
Absolutely. So this is the time when we will have to go back to the old libraries, take out the big old ephemeris, and start checking your data out of the real ephemeris. I mean, what we have is ephemeris just from the human design point of view, but the original, the real planetary ephemeris is the big books dating back hundreds of years, where you can check where did which planet, what was the position of each planet at a certain time. So, it's just a way of looking in a big book and then collecting the data from there.
Yeah, it's time to invest into the book acquiring.
Okay, but I'm taking a note. So whatever we do, I'll discuss it with Martin and Susan. We could do just one online evening about that. That would be fun, or we could incorporate it in. Yeah, it would go nice in level 4 in the RAFE reading. Show you the technicalities of drawing up a chart. So we can easily fit it in somewhere. But I've taken a note. I will discuss that and see how we offer that. But that's definitely no big problem. Okay, now we've been quite a long time. I thank you all for being here. Yeah. I hope to see you in our classes. I hope to hear from you again. I hope to, interact with you. We are available. All the courses, you can find them on our website. Right in the beginning here, you have the link to the training data, all the details, or you simply drop me an email if you have any questions. So we are quite easily available. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and let's see what comes out of it.
Ilse, thank you for hosting us.
My pleasure. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye then. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
evening, morning, whatever.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.